This song is called Seeds of Compassion by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, illustrated by Bao Lu. Lessons from the life and teaching of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Have you heard of the Dalai Lama? He's a very powerful, spiritual, creative man who works for world peace. Now that's a question that I want to know. Do you work for world peace? We all do our little bits. Let's learn a little bit about the Dalai Lama. Do you work for world peace? What do you do? Let's learn a bit about him. So he's spoken in many countries to children around the world. And even though he hasn't been able to meet every child personally, he's made this book to help young people to learn about what he's done in his life to cultivate happiness and the seeds of something called compassion. Do you know what compassion is? We're going to learn about it. So we start. I was born in Tatsur, in the Amdo province of northeastern Tibet. No, there wasn't any threats at that time, but it certainly would come later. It was a place of the tall mountains, clear streams and blue skies, and many animals. Mastiffs, sheeps, horses, yaks, scorpions, chickens, and cows, all carrying things on their back. Our home was in the shadows of the Amichiri, the mountain that pierces the sky. Nature's powerful, no? To the human eye. Mine was a family of farmers. My father was not one to harm, no. He would spend his day tending and selling horses, and I would stay home with my mother and help her with the daily work of whatever the course is, of what life had given. We would plant barley, buckwheat, and potatoes because that's what we did for our living. But those were not the only seeds we planted. From the time I was very young, my mother planted in me the seeds of compassion. By the example that she set, she raised me on a diet of pure love. See, what you eat is not only the food that you put in your stomach, it's also the mind state and heart state that you live with, so you need to use it with wiseness. It was often my job to collect the eggs from our hens, and I did it with all of my attention. I took my duty very seriously because I was a child with much duty. Well, my mother was cooking the aroma of curry. A delicious bread was wafting from the kitchen into my nose. I was feeling so happy, loving in my mom's food, so I would play in the courtyard with the scorpions for company. But be careful, don't hurt your finger. But he wasn't killing them, no, cause he was living a life of compassion. Sometimes I would sit on the roof of our house. It was a perfect place to watch the mountains reach towards the sky. I'd imagine what the older boys were doing as they accompanied their fathers herding. I couldn't wait to be big enough to do that with my dad too. Now my favorite perch was atop where my mother's shoulders were. From there I felt like one of her older boys. I was taller than my father at that point, and getting around was so easy. What I really wanted when I left, I would simply tug on my mother's left ear. When I wanted to go right, I would tug on her right ear. And if she didn't understand my instructions, then I would just she would choose to ignore them. I would kick my legs on the back, cause she learned that, in fact. He learned that from what he watched when his dad was with the yaks and the horses. Of course, it's although my mother could not teach me to read or write, I learned so much from her. Regardless, I was often a naughty boy, but she always treated me with kindness. Yes, she did. Never destroyed my inner essence. No, she didn't. Sometimes I think she may have been a little too patient with me. In fact, I was a bit spoiled, but that was her way of showing her love to me. And the nature actually was this way for everyone she was with them. One year when there was a big famine in the region and many families didn't have enough to eat, my mother gave whatever food we had stored to our neighbors and those in need. Because the life that you have is the way you help others and feed them. In this way, she tended the seeds of the most important lesson by demonstrating how to practice compassion. She showed me as a child that it was possible to treat all people with warm-heartedness and to help ease their suffering, like a tall tree that never forgets the seed it sprouted from, right? Beautiful. I've returned to this seed of compassion my mother planted, and which I carry inside of me as a small child at home, as a young monk in training, and today as I spread the message of compassion around the world. So what message do you want to pass around the world? As if you had a ball in your hand that you could send in anyone else's hand, because the Dalai Lama had to send this message to many others. I loved growing up under the big open sky in Tutser, but I always knew that my life may go beyond my small village. When I was almost 3, some monks came from the capital, Lhasa, looking for the child who was reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan Buddhists. They had been searching all over the country for him, and the millions of people of Tibet had been waiting to hear that he had been found. No one in my family could have expected that I was actually that child. Least of all, me. But after passing a series of tests where I collectively identified the belongings of the previous Dalai Lama and held them with the greatest sense of familiarity, our visitors were satisfied that they had found the boy that they were looking for. See, in every culture, they have different beliefs, and in the belief system of the Tibetan Buddhists, they believe that you can die and then you come back, and this little boy came back as he was before, one of these older spiritual leaders in their tradition. And everyone was waiting for him. And we continue. At the age of 4, I made a journey to Lhasa in a caravan. It really was awesome. That snaked through the mountains. I was counting. It took us 3 months as the news spread. I started to lift up my head, and that the news that the new Dalai Lama had arrived had been found. It was me. I will strive to do the best for the people. They had joined in the procession. A procession is a large group of people walking. Yes. I rode in a beautiful palanquin, that's what he's walking in or sitting in with my brother. We were rambunctious, meaning we made lots of noise. It wasn't our choice, we're just kids and just having fun, just some boys. Every time we were roughhoused inside the cozy cabin, we would knock it off balance. We had to be separated for the rest of the journey. What an interesting story. What was your story? Please share. In Lhasa, after I turned 6, my formal education then began, and my days were filled with studies. In the few hours I had for personal time, I loved to puzzle over how things worked. I could spend hours taking apart toys, clocks, and watches, and putting them back together to watch them, exploring the mechanics of the movie projectors and cars. This occasionally got me in trouble. So he's kind of like a mechanic, no? A mechanic of things, a mechanic of the world. He studied very hard, but when he didn't study, he just explored and had fun. As I trained to be a monk, didn't enter funks. No, I studied many subjects like Buddhist philosophy and history, logic and reasoning, metaphysics, poetry, medicine, Tibetan, and Sanskrit. Of course, it's got to be what you got to study in the monastery. One topic that I love was compassion, because of the seed that had been planted in me by my mother many years before. I believe that it was leading me for the freedom to free the people held in the prison next to Potala Palace where I lived. He's thinking of those suffering. I have spent my entire life studying this topic, and I know it's my duty to help make the world a more compassionate place. What's your duty with your life? What will you face? What will you embrace? What will you chase? What will you make your life? Don't make it a waste. The remarkable things is the ability that everyone has inside of us. It is the strongest, I believe, with the children like you. Many Buddhist teachings compare those on the journey of life to sprouts of the young shoots of a plant that must be tended until they grow strong and thrive. So he's studying nature to see the ways that human nature can be alive. But children are the sprouts, not just physically, but in how they contain potentials that can be nourished. Actually, the seeds of compassion is within every child. It is there from birth, and it is part of our nature, and it flourishes because of the love that we give and receive. Look at all these beautiful animals. Now, if you think about it, when it comes to the 5 basic senses, right? Smell, touch, taste, seeing, hearing, all these senses. Humans are not that impressive. The elephant has a long nose and can pick up faint scents as if from much greater distances than we can. The hare or rabbit can turn his tail ears forward and backwards to pick up sounds that we would often miss. The eagle has eyes that can spot the tiniest prey from far up in the sky. It's not the use of our senses that make us special, right? Because our senses are not the best compared to the animal world. But we do have a special sense. But only humans have the ability with discipline and effort and humility to train the mind in what makes us different from all of the animals in space and time. It is our superpower. It is where the seed of compassion thrives every minute and hour. Look at him, he is pointing somewhere. He's pointing to the special part right under his hair. It's called his brain. It's called his mind. It's his spirit, and his hands are open. Can you hear it? Think about this. When you are playing in the schoolyard and a group welcomes you with a smile, do you want to play with them? Of course you do. Or do you want to play with someone who greets you with a scowl? Of course you want to play with someone who welcomes you with a genuine smile. And you already have the ability to see genuine compassion in others. It's already built inside of you. From self-confidence grows compassion, and from compassion, strength blooms. So that means if I'm confident in myself, I can give strength to others. But so often in our world, the world puts importance only on material things, things that you can see and touch, and pushes us to be competitive with everyone around us. The material world is based only on the 5 basic senses, which are what? Touch, smell, taste, seeing, and hearing. But there's so much more beyond this. Compassion is based in the mind, the part of us that is uniquely human every single time. It is where you might just grow strongest in how you can create something positive in this world. Become a compassionate boy or girl. Being compassionate is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of the strength inside of you. When you approach someone with true warm-heartedness, they can feel it. Doing so only brings more joy to you and them. There are many simple ways to bring happiness in this world. Think about it. How do you want to bring happiness in this world? But you already know that. What you must do now is protect and nurture the seed inside of you. When someone disagrees with you, rather than think they are mistaken, you must ask, why might they feel this way? When someone is scowling or upset or hurt, you could busy yourself with your own concerns, or you could ask, what might I do to help them? These are examples of compassion, right? These are all examples of compassion. These questions may not come immediately, but just as you gradually learn to read or swim or play an instrument, you can build compassion day by day inside of you. Do not try to hide it too far. It takes practice, of course, but you have the ability. This is your life course. And even when you slip and don't make the compassionate choice, you can still listen to the higher voice. Tomorrow's presence, the opportunity, it will present itself again to you to try again. I have many responsibilities in my life, but helping to make the world a better and compassionate place is the most important one. We cannot change the past. We can only learn from it, in fact. Otherwise, it is beyond our control, but the future, we can change it. As children, you already have the tools needed to build a happier and better world and compassionate world. there are some little facts about His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So what's the lesson in this story? The lesson is pretty simple, actually. It's using the compassion that you have inside of you and I have inside of me. It's a little seed that we have been planted. That's already been planted, we've been born with. But in which ways are you actually giving it water, giving it sun, giving it light, giving it might, giving it the light that it needs? So I ask that question to you. How are you feeding compassion inside of you every day? What are you doing? Keep reflecting on it, because if we're not building compassion in ourselves, we may be building negativity, we may be building sadness, we may be complaining. So my question to reflect on, what was your favorite part of the book? Please comment. What was your favorite part of the book? I'd have to say my favorite part was the moment when he started to ask the young children, what would you prefer, to go towards another person who is scowling or a person who is smiling? We have this inside of our own inner intuition. Of course, we will move towards the person who is smiling because we want to have the same smile that they have. But we also need to understand and have compassion for those who are scowling, which means that we need to pay attention and ask ourselves some deeper questions, such as, why are they feeling that way? What can I do to help them feel a little better? Give them space, whatever it is, but the lesson is to understand what other people feel. That's my lesson that I understood. So what are you doing to understand and build compassion in this world that is complicated? Please comment. Thank you. Peace.